Okay, welcome back, boys, to Shooting It Straight, where I tend to produce videos that scorch the asses of tack-to-tur trend followers in the gun community by putting out facts and truths and logic. And we're going to do just that in this video. So grab a snack and buckle up for a ride along on this quick little caliber debate. Now I'm going to talk about the .40 caliber and why it's still superior, even though a lot of people say it's dead, it's obsolete. That's not the case. First, I'm a major fan of the .40 caliber. I've never hidden that fact. I tell everybody that. I love the caliber. And I always have liked it since they came out back in, 91? When they were first, widely available on the market. And my police agency quickly adopted it. Now, most people get the history of the .40 caliber entirely wrong. So let's quickly clear that up first, okay? Because history is important. The fact is, the .40 caliber cartridge was not developed by Smith & Wesson back in 1990, as everybody says. It was first actually developed by John Moses Browning himself back in 1910. And he began designing a pistol specifically for this caliber, which, here goes another piece of information that people want to argue about and don't want to believe, but he began designing a pistol for it that actually at the time was a slightly scaled down version of his 1911. Now later, John Moses Browning decided to design a different pistol specifically chambered for this round because he liked it so much. And that was back in the 1920s before he died. And that pistol was in fact what we know now as the Browning High Power, the BHP. Except it wasn't called the Browning High Power back then. It was only after John Browning's death that it began to be called the Browning High Power. Unfortunately, as I said, John Browning died just before the pistol was fully completed. A gun designer at FN, Fabrique Nationale, completed the final details of that pistol, and then he suddenly rechambered it. He rechambered it from the .40 caliber to the more popular and available 9mm cartridge in the 1930s. Which, I mean, it makes sense. Nobody knew of the .40 caliber. Nobody heard of it. The 9mm was already widely popular and available, so he just switched the chambering. That's where the gun got the name High Power, because the magazine held 13 rounds of 9mm, which at the time was the highest capacity for a pistol. Now, since Mr. Browning died, the .40 caliber kind of died with him, but only temporarily. In the mid-1970s, Browning's idea and design of a .40 caliber cartridge was revived and perfected by two guys, one named Whit Collins and the other one a little bit more famous, Colonel Jeff Cooper. Together, they developed a 180 grain .40 caliber cartridge and a second 200 grain cartridge, both in .40 caliber. Now, the test gun that they used for these was a modified Browning High Power in honor of John Browning. Now, the 180 grain cartridge produced an average velocity of 1,000 feet per second. But when using a trimmed down belted 224 Weatherby case, it drove that 180 grain projectile to 1,200 feet per second. Now that same belted Weatherby case drove a 200 grain 40 caliber 1,000 feet per second. Now those are pretty hot loads by any standards. Now because the magazine publication Guns and Ammo, they assisted this project and documented the entire development of it. So these 40 caliber cartridges at that time, this was the 70s, remember, they were designated then as the 40 G&A, Guns and Ammo. And the second one, the bigger one, was the 40 G&A Magnum. And both of those cartridges were featured in the 1977 issue of the Guns and Ammo magazine. However, once again, the 40 caliber was ignored because people at the time were obsessed with the 44 Magnum that you saw in the Dirty Harry movies. So they all migrated to the 44 Magnum and didn't pay attention to the 40 caliber. Now, here's an interesting note. Colonel Cooper, however, didn't give up. Naturally, he went on to take the 40 caliber cartridge to its maximum potential and developed what is now called the 10 millimeter. And he designed a pistol specifically for that 10 millimeter called the Bren 10, which was a pistol based off of a CZ design. So the 40 caliber did not spring from the 10 millimeter, as a lot of people claim. Actually, the 10 millimeter sprang from the 40 caliber cartridge. All right. Finally, it took a heartbreaking law enforcement bloodbath in 1986 to bring the 40 caliber back to the forefront where it should have been all along. Now, speaking about the infamous Miami FBI shootout, the 9mm and 38 special cartridges fired by the FBI agents during that gun battle had little effect on the two armed suspects. So the FBI began a search for a more effective, more powerful cartridge to issue to their agents. Now, at first, the FBI issued 10 millimeters, which Smith & Wesson Model 1076 semi-autos. The problem was it was a bit too hard to handle in that full power load. And, the pistol itself was huge, and it was very heavy and hard to carry. Now, this is where the case of the 10 millimeter cartridge was slightly trimmed down or shortened by Smith & Wesson, which is why it's called a Smith & Wesson or 40 caliber Smith & Wesson now. That's why now it's a 40 Smith & Wesson. So the 40 Smith & Wesson did come from the 10 millimeter. The 40 caliber did not. The 10 millimeter came from the 40 caliber cartridge. Now, beginning in 1991, the vast majority of street cops all across America were carrying and using the 40 Smith & Wesson, including the FBI and most other federal law enforcement agencies. And for 25 years, they were getting excellent results. Not just good results, but excellent results. All right, even animal control officers who have been required to put down an animal or put down an animal during an animal attack, even they were reporting that they were getting much better results with the 40 caliber than they ever did with the 9 millimeter. Now, for 25 straight years, the 40 caliber was absolute king. And then the FBI decided to suddenly ignore all of that documented success and effectiveness by dropping the 40 and taking a step backwards to the 9 millimeter again. Now, if you're one of those people that like to say that the switch was because, well, it was determined that the 9 millimeter with all that wonderful bullet technology was just as good as any other caliber. That's horse shit. Let me correct you. Bullet technology is not a factor, since bullet technology has been applied to every single caliber, even the .40 caliber, not just to the 9mm. The fact is, like it or not, the FBI switched back to the 9mm, and I've said this before, because the new generation of FBI recruits couldn't handle the horrendous hand cannon of the .40 caliber. All right, they just couldn't qualify on the range. So, because the FBI is not only totally corrupt, but also completely incompetent, they opted to switching for a softer shooting caliber instead of forcing the recruits to practice more. Look, if it's softer here, it's going to hit softer there. Does it make sense? And of course, naturally, whatever the FBI does is what other law enforcement agencies across the country will do. And whatever the cops do, the general citizens will also do. It's just a societal cycle of monkey see, monkey do, because most people can't think for themselves. So suddenly the Smith & Wesson the .40 Smith & Wesson is out of favor again. You know, it's almost considered a sin these days to praise the .40 caliber. Now listen, before I crack on the 9mm too much, let me just say that I do indeed believe it is an effective caliber if it's in the right loading. But it is not just as good as the .40 caliber. The fact is, the .40 Smith & Wesson in its most common loading, 165 grains, is significantly more powerful than a 9mm in its most common loading, 124 grain plus P. Alright? A 165 grain .40 caliber puts out anywhere between 484 to 528 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. And that's important. The 9mm 124 grain plus P puts out anywhere between 384 and 413 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. A lot of difference. Now we all know that this energy or power does not always transfer into the amount of destruction caused, but in most cases it does. Look, the .40 Smith & Wesson does everything that a 9mm will do, and it will do it better. And, you know, those that hate on the .40 know that, which is exactly why they hate on the .40. It is still proven to be ballistically superior to the 9mm in every respect, category, test, scenario, simulation, and result. I mean, after all, Smith & Wesson specifically designed it to be superior to the 9mm. If they didn't, wouldn't it have been much easier to simply beef up the existing 9mm? Because the technology was certainly there. Obviously, they made the .40, right? The short answer is that they could not have beefed it up to the same level as the .40 caliber, and they still can't. To do so would require substantial changes to both the bullet and the case, and then it would no longer be a 9mm. So, in the end, there is no doubt that the .40 Smith & Wesson is an outstanding cartridge. It's been proven for decades now by cops everywhere, and it will outperform any 9mm cartridge in most cases. The .40 caliber is certainly not dead. There's just too much overwhelming proof on record to show that it is an absolutely effective man-stopper and not a bad hunting cartridge. Now, I understand that the .40 caliber may not be right for you for whatever reason, okay? We call that free choice. That's a good thing. What I can't understand is the hatred for this superior cartridge and the phony bullshit excuses constantly given as a reason for choosing 9 over .40. Look, if you can't handle the recoil for whatever reason, just admit it. You know, drop the retarded Well, the 9mm gun holds more rounds. Look, if you need a gun that carries 17 to 19 rounds in it, well, then you can't shoot for shit, obviously. And you're not prepared for a fight, you're prepared to panic. So, so that's it for me, fellas. That's just my 2 cents on that. So, thanks for watching. I'm Antonius, and man, I'm always shooting it straight. Ciao.